The Rauza Bal, Roza Bal, Urdu, is the name of a shrine located in the Khanyaar quarter in downtown area of Srinagar in Kashmir. The word Rauza means tomb. The word Bal means place, or often a landing place by a lake, hence place of the tomb. Locals believe a sage buried there is Yuz Asaf or Yuz Asaf, and Mir Sayyid Naseeruddin. Originally a center of Buddhism, Hinduism, and Shaivism for 1,000 years before Islam. In 1894 a convert from Judaism to Orthodox Christianity named Nicolas Notovitch published a book, Life of Saint Issa, Best of the Sons of Men, in French. It describes a gospel discovered at a Hermes Buddhist monastery in Ladakh about the missing life of Jesus in 14 chapters. This provoked interest because the shrine was relatively unknown until the founder of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, claimed in 1899 that it is actually the tomb of Jesus. This belief is shared by many Ahmadis today, though the local Sunni caretakers of the shrine believe that the theory that Jesus is buried anywhere on the face of the earth is blasphemous to Islam. Building. The structure stands in front of a Muslim cemetery. It consists of a low rectangular building on a raised platform, surrounded by railings at the front and an entry. Within is a shrine to Yuz Asaf. The building also houses the burial tomb of a Shia Muslim saint, Mir Sayyid Naseeruddin, a descendant of Imam Musa Raza, 8th Imam of the Shias, whose shrine is in Mashhad. The structure was previously maintained by the local community, but is now maintained by a board of directors consisting of Sunni Muslims. According to Fida Hasnain, who is a supporter of Ahmadi beliefs, the tomb contains a rock carving that is said to show feet bearing crucifixion wounds, and the body is buried according to what Hasnain considers the Jewish tradition of directions and not according to the Islamic tradition. The Sunni Muslim authorities at the shrine believe Yuz Asaf and Mir Sayyid Naseeruddin to be Muslim holy men. History. Buddhist and Hindu period. There is no record of the shrine during Kashmir's Buddhist period, nor during the Kashmir Sultanate, when many Buddhist temples were converted into mosques, such as the Shankaracharya Temple or Throne of Solomon. The shrine is first mentioned in the Wikipedia, also known as the Tariqas Army, by the Khwaja Muhammad Azam Didamari, a local Srinagar Sufi writer. Muhammad Azam states that the tomb is of a foreign prophet and prince, Yuzasaf, or in modern local Kashmiri transcription Yuzasaf. The name may derive from the Urdu Yuzasaf in the legend of Balor and Yuzasaf, Yuzasaf being a name for Gautama Buddha. Yuzasaf occurs as a spelling in the Rasailiquan Al-Safa of the Brethren of Purity and other sources. David Marshall Lang notes that the connection of the Buddhist Yuzasaf with Kashmir in part results from a printing error in the Bombay Arabic edition referencing the legend of the wisdom of Balavar, which makes its hero Prince Yuzasaf die in Kashmir by confusion with Kushnara, the traditional place of the original Buddha's death. A court case was brought mentioning the shrine in 1184 AH 1770 AD. The seal of the Justice of Islam Mullah Fazil 1194 AH verdict. Now this court, after obtaining evidence, concludes that during the reign of Raja Gopadatta, who built and repaired many temples, especially the Throne of Solomon, Yuz Asaf came to the valley. Prince by descent, he was pious and saintly and had given up earthly pursuits. He spent all his time in prayers and meditation. The people of Kashmir, having become idolaters after the great flood of Noah, the God Almighty sent Yuz Asaf as a prophet to the people of Kashmir. He proclaimed oneness of God till he passed away. Yuz Asaf was buried at Khanyaar on the banks of the lake, and his shrine is known as Roza Bal. In the year 871 A.H. Sayyid Naseeruddin, a descendant of Imam Musa Raza, was also buried beside the grave of Yuz Asaf. Orders. Since the shrine is visited by devotees both high and common, and since the applicant, Raymond Khan, is the hereditary custodian of the shrine, it is ordered that he be entitled to receive the offerings made at the shrine as before, and no one else shall have any right to such offerings. Given under our hand, 11th Jamad-ud Sani, 1184 A.H. Hasnain's translation follows Ghulam Ahmad in dividing the name of Yuzasaf, found in the Bulharan Yuzasaf tradition about Gautama Buddha, into two syllables, Yuzasaf. Yuzasaf, Arabic Yuzasaf or Buddhasaf, is derived from the Sanskrit bodhisattva. The Sanskrit word was changed to bodhisattva in Persian texts in the 6th or 7th century, then to Buddhasaf or Yudasaf in an 8th century Arabic document. In the aftermath of the Indo-Pakistani War of 1965 and continuing Hindu-Muslim and Muslim-Muslim tensions and incidents, the Ziyarat Roza Bal was desecrated and the grave dug up on the 27th of October 1965. Indian columnist Praveen Swami identified the culprits as a stayback cell of Pakistani operatives, but this is not confirmed by other sources. Ahmadiyya claims regarding the shrine. Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, the founder of Ahmadiyyat, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, inferring from the verse 2350 of the Quran, believed that the only occasion in the life of Jesus, son of Mary, that his life was seriously threatened, when an attempt was made to kill him by the cross. The Quran saying that we prepared an abode for them in an elevated part of the earth, being a place of quiet and security, and watered with running springs, Ahmad says, may very fittingly apply to the valley of Kashmir. A narration from the Islamic prophet Muhammad is also referred to in support of this interpretation of Quran 2350 by the Ahmadiyya. In his book Jesus in India, he elaborately claimed that Rauza Bal was the tomb of Jesus. The book was fully published in 1908, and the first complete English translation in 1944. Ahmad had separately advocated the view that Jesus did not die by crucifixion, but traveled to the Indian subcontinent and died there at age 120. Peskov states that Ghulam Ahmad separated Yuzasaf into two components, Yuz and Asaf, interpreted Yuz as Jesus and Asaf as signifying Jesus the Gatherer. The Ahmadiyya writer Khwaja Nazir Ahmad's Jesus in Heaven on Earth developed Ghulam Ahmad's ideas. There are ruins of a Hindu temple near Srinagar where Ghulam Ahmad claimed Jesus had preached. Due to the lack of other Western sources, the Ahmadi rely on the 3rd century apocryphal Acts of Thomas and generally post-15th century Muslim sources in the reconstruction of an Eastern travel path for Jesus. J. Gordon Melton states that having assumed the Mujaddid appellation in the 1880s, and having declared himself the promised Messiah for the Christians, Ghulam Ahmad simply picked up the legend that Jesus had visited India to increase his self-identification with Jesus. Gerald O'Connor states that no historical evidence has been provided to support Ghulam Ahmad's theory that Jesus died in India. Simon Ross Valentine classifies the theory as a legend and considers the burial of Jesus in Rozabal a myth in the scale of the legend of Joseph of Arimathea taking the Holy Grail to Britain. Paul C. Pappas states that from a historical perspective, the Ahmadi identification of Yuzasaf with Jesus was derived from legends and documents which include a number of clear historical errors, and that it is almost impossible to identify Yuzasaf with Jesus. Ghulam Ahmad's theory that Jesus died in India is distinct from the 1894 suggestion of Nicolas Notovitch that Jesus traveled to India in his Earlier years during the unknown years of Jesus and Ghulam Ahmad specifically disagreed with Notovitch. Notovitch's claims to have found a manuscript about Jesus's travels to India have been totally discredited by modern scholarship as a hoax. Notovitch later confessed to having fabricated his evidence. Modern scholars generally hold that, in general, there is no historical basis to substantiate any of the claims of the travels of Jesus to India. 20th century Khwaja Nazir Ahmad. After Notovitch and Ahmad, the next widely noticed text was the 1908 The Aquarian Gospel of Jesus Christ, transcribed from the Book of God's Remembrance, which Levi H. Dowling claimed he had transcribed from lost Akashic records. Khwaja Nazir Ahmad, an Ahmadi missionary in Woking, developed Ghulam Ahmad's ideas in the 1940s. He also claimed that Moses was buried at Bhutan Mount Niltup near Bandipur. His book contained a translated section of the Ijmal al-Din of Shia authority Ibn Babawayh where Yuz Asaf is mentioned. He compared the tree with Bushra, towards which he used to draw people, the spring with learning, and the birds with the people who sat around him and accepted the religion he preached. Then Yuz Asaf, after roaming about in many cities, reached that country which is called Kashmir. He traveled in it far and wide and stayed there and spent his remaining life there until death overtook him. He left the earthly body and was elevated towards the light. But before his death, he sent for a disciple of his, Babad by name, who used to serve him and was well versed in all matters. Translation into English from original Arabic of Ijmal al-Din of Ibn Babawayh. Republished Khwaja Nazir Ahmad, Jesus in Heaven on Earth, 1952, page 362. They claim that this text relates to Issa and not Balaam, and Josaphat originates in Ahmad's earlier 1902 use of the same text. Ahmadi claims that this section of the Ijmal al-Din of Ibn Babawayh relates to Issa is rejected by Shia Muslims. The Orientalist Max Muller had already translated this section into German when refuting the claims of Nicolas Notovitch. Ahmadi websites and print sources cite various local documents and traditions in support of Ghulam Ahmad's identification of the Srinagar shrine as Jesus' tomb. These include Islamic versions of the legend of Balaam and Josaphat, in Arabic Buddhism Yuzasaf, Ikmal-ud-Din of Ibn Baba, regarded by scholars as concerning the Balaam and Josaphat legend. Qisa Shahzada Yuzasaf were Hakim Balor, 18th-19th century Urdu version of the Book of Balor and Buddhism. The Ain ul-Hayat of Ibn Muhammad Haid Muhammad al-Alama Majlisi. Texts mentioning Jesus Rauza Bal of Mir Muhammad bin Cacahuate, which contains a version of the legend of Abgar concerning the conversion of the king of Edessa in Turkey before Jesus' crucifixion. Ghulam Ahmad gives a paraphrase of the original Bhavashya Mahapurana, a Hindu text with a section discussing Jesus and Muhammad. Also Queen Victoria. Local history of Kashmir, a 1946 photograph of a single page purporting to be from Tariq-i-Kashmir, a lost history by Mullah Nadri, 1420 AD, used as a source by Hyder Malik. Khwaja Nazir Ahmad printed this photograph in Jesus in Heaven on Earth. The text in the photograph contains mention of Yuzasaf, but the standard text of the Mullah Nadri traditions transmitted by Hyder Malik contain no mention of Yuzasaf, and no historian cites Tariq-i-Kashmir as containing a Yuzasaf tradition. The original page, which Ahmad tried to buy in 1946, is now lost, so no tests can be conducted to the age of the document. Wiki-at-i-Kashmir of Muhammad Azam Dinamari. History of Kashmir. Mention of Prince Yuzasaf. Official decree of 1770. Court case identifying the two saints at the Roza Bal as Yuzasaf and Sayyid Naseeruddin. Bargai Suleiman of Mir Sayyid Shahabadi Kashmiri, a history of Kashmir which comments on the other Muslim holy man buried at the Roza Bal shrine, Sayyid Naseeruddin, Waji Satawarik of Abdul Nabi Khanyaar, history of the Sikh period of Kashmir which mentions the Roza Bal as grave of Sayyid Naseeruddin and Prince Yuz Asaf. Taqar Suleiman, remains of a temple on hill near Dal Lake in Srinagar, Kashmir. Tariq-i-Kabir Kashmir of Haji Mohiuddin, the first source to mention that some believe the Roza Bal to be the tomb of Jesus. 3 years after Mirza Ghulam Ahmad's identification. Pappas states that the analysis of any possible combinations of date assignment to Nazir Ahmad's theory about the travels of Jesus indicates that none of the scenarios can be consistent with the generally accepted historical dates such as the reign of Gondophares, in part because Nazir Ahmad relied on the dating methods used in the court of Zayn al-Abidin, Andreas Faber-Kaiser and Holger Kirsten. In 1976 Andreas Faber-Kaiser, a Spanish ufologist, and in 1983 Siegfried Obermeier and Holger Kirsten, 2 German writers on esoteric subjects, popularized the subject in Christ Died in Kashmir, Christ in Kashmir and Christ Lived in India respectively. Kirsten's ideas were among various expositions of the theory critiqued by Gunter Grombold in Jesus in Indien. Das Ende einer Legend. Wilhelm Schneemelcher, a German theologian, states that the work of Kirsten is fantasy and has nothing to do with historical research. Gerald O'Collins, an Australian Jesuit priest, states that Kirsten's work is simply the repackaging of a legend for consumption by the general public. The interpretation that the tomb is aligned east-west is found in the Ahmadi publications, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad's Kashtino and other sources such as Islamic Review 1981 and Review of Religions 1983. This is supported by the reference from Ibn Babuwayh's version of the Yuzasaf Siddhartha story in Kamaluddin. Then he stretched out his legs and turned his head to the west and his face to the east. He died in this position. Popular media. Richard Denton wrote and produced a documentary for BBC4 titled Did Jesus Die? In 2004. It is narrated by Bernard Hill and features Elaine Pagels, Peter Stanford, John Dominic Crossan, Paula Fredrickson, Father Jerome Murphy O'Connor, Tom Wright, Thierry Lacombe, Richard Andrews, James Tabor, Steve Mason, and Ahmadi editor Abdul Aziz Kashmiri. The documentary explores the survival from the cross theory and, in passing, mentions theories such as a journey to India by Jesus, with a section on the story of Yuz Asaf. On Christmas Day 2007, Channel 4 showed the documentary The Hidden Story of Jesus presented by Robert Beckford, which included filming inside the shrine of Roza Bal, and among those interviewed for the documentary was Fida Hasnain. Robert Beckford remained open-minded to the possibility that Yuz Asaf was Jesus. More recently, the tomb at Roza Bal began to gain popularity among Western tourists as the possible tomb of Jesus. According to a 2010 BBC correspondent report, the old story may have been recently promoted by local shopkeepers who thought it would be good for business, and its inclusion in the Lonely Planet travel guide to India helped drive the tourist business. The novel The Roza Bal line by Ashwin Sanghi makes reference to the shrine. In 2010, a 53-minute documentary was launched by the Indian film director Yashendra Prasad with the name Roza Bal Shrine of Srinagar.